Okay, we're back. And again, to finish up, again, we had solo in the steady state. You know, as you're adding more and more capital, you're getting less and less bang for your buck. And we have to keep in mind the factor of depreciation. Again, depreciation, remember, it's the loss of value of our resources over time and use. Now, when we, if we take GDP, because I know they mention it in the student learning outcomes, well, basically you take gross domestic product. If you subtract depreciation from it, you get what is called net domestic product. And all that's saying is, okay, well, all right, we made, you know, whatever you want, we made $23 trillion worth of stuff last year. And you say, okay, yeah, but, you know, 1 trillion of it was replacement for, you know, things that were used up. So that would be your depreciation factor. So if you did 23, but you had 1 trillion in depreciation, you would subtract that. So you would say your net domestic product would be 22 trillion, something like that, okay? All right, and again, depreciation is just a straight line, and as our output, and this is Solo's, you know, output function. It just comes up quickly, tapers off, and boom, where it hits depreciation, that is the steady state. No reason to add any more equipment. All you do is you just replace what has been used up or just what got old, okay? All right, so that that kind of takes care of this board. And now this idea of, you know, this steady state idea is not brand new, all right? We had, in fact, in the late 1800s, there was a very strong school of thought saying, hey, you know what? We have done every major scientific breakthrough possible. We've gone about as far as we can go. The only thing left now is we're going to refine, you know, what we've already discovered. But all the big breakthroughs, you know, have been made. All right. Now, interestingly enough, there was an economist, Robert Gordon, in 2012. He kind of said the same thing. You know, everything from here on out is just going to be a refinement. All the major breakthroughs have been finished. You know, I'm sorry, but boy, you know, even at my age, that's an awfully depressing thought. But you know, we've gone about as far as we can go. Thank God, we know that that's not true. So let's look at technology, the big mover that's shifting, you know, all these output functions. Technology is one of those that we talked about before, shifts the production possibility curve outward in a major way. All right, so what's going on with technology? Okay, again, what we're talking about with technology, we're improving or using knowledge. Again, we're improving or using knowledge to expand our current resources and or to develop new ones. All right, and what that does, it will shift a production, remember our old production possibility frontier? That technology was one of the biggies to shift it. It'll shift it out. Now, does it always shift the production possibility curve out evenly? No, because now there are some examples where technology, you know, just shifted across the board all sorts of business. The internet, for instance, that helped all types of businesses. But a lot of times, very often, a new piece of technology will help a particular type of industry a lot. And then it might help other industries related or even unrelated industries, but it won't help them all that much. Anyway, the long and the short of it is, it can shift. It doesn't always shift out evenly, but it is possible to do that. The nice thing for us is that it shifts all these output functions up and up and up. So, you know, if we were saying our depreciation was here, boom, whoop, well, it wasn't exactly straight, but if that was our steady state, well, no, it's not our steady state, because we're moving up and up. This is a dynamic. This is a dynamic curve. It's not just etched in stone. This is moving this way, but it's moving up, and especially with technology, okay? So we've got technology. It gives us innovation, new products, new processes, okay? Now, and again, some of this is not in your book, so pay close attention. Some technology isn't always giving us the big bang for our buck. Now, we talk about some being a little disappointing. Well, for instance, when we were surprised by the Russians in the late 1950s when they launched Sputnik, okay? And we thought, gee whiz, we are behind in the space race. It caused a big panic here in the country. And then John F. Kennedy said in the very early 1960s, we will put a man on the moon in this decade. That sounded incredible, that we could, you know, actually think that we could do that. But we did, okay? Now, the space program, there have been a lot of benefits from the space program, but quite honestly, we haven't gotten quite as many as we thought we would. Now, we have to admit, though, that the U.S., you know, needed to break the ground in space so that now we have private SpaceX, private firms can go forward and even improve upon that. So it was a little disappointing in a sense, but it did lead the way for other innovations, okay? Now, one other innovation that might have been a little disappointing, nuclear power plants. When I was your age or even younger, when I was in high school, you'd have a picture of a new, you know, a modern city, what a city would look like in 2022. Always had, you know, a couple of nuclear power stations, because that was going to provide us all the power we ever were going to need, and it's clean, no problem. So, and it was going to be really relatively cheap. Well, that really hasn't happened as much. We notice that right now there's so many more safety protocols that we have to use. So that has been somewhat of a nuclear power plant, at least at this stage. Perhaps the newer technology will come up with some fail-safe properties that will make nuclear power plants once again, you know, efficient and operational. Although nuclear power has been a big help to our nuclear submarines, they can stay underwater for, you know, months and months and months. My uncle was a scientist in the Navy, worked in the with the submarines. We see, you know, also a picture of a new city. When I was in high school, we'd have not only nuclear plants, but we'd also have flying cars. Absolutely going to have flying cars. Well, you know, let's face it, that didn't happen. But what did? Well, we certainly looks like we've got electric cars. I mean, I've got a lot of son-in-laws. Two are really big internal combustion engine guys, and two absolutely love, and they have electric cars. So that transition is very interesting. I still like the internal combustion engine, but you got to admit, the wave of new electronic vehicles is really astounding. All right, now some innovation, and now stay with me on this, some innovation has resulted in huge changes, okay? So we have, you know, for instance, productivity enhancement. Do you realize that back in 1940, all right, and you know, when I would be thinking about that, I think, well, 1940, the farmers were, you know, growing corn. They were working hard. They were, you know, pretty efficient. Maybe you could tweak it and do a little better, like they thought in the 1890s. Yeah, you know, we can tweak it and do a little bit better. But we're not doing a little better. We're doing astoundingly better. And it has to do with new technology, and new innovation, new farming techniques. Because in 1940, we were getting 30 bushels of corn per acre. Now, we're getting 185 bushels of corn per acre. That's amazing. That's unbelievable. And even going further back, the Model T, when Henry Ford put in the production line, okay, and raised double the salary of the working man and woman. You know, everyone said they were laughing, he was going to go out of business, he was going to go bankrupt. Well, he didn't. Not only did he not go bankrupt, but that Model T on the assembly line, which was a great innovation, was so productive. You know, if you and I were working the line, we could actually afford to buy the product that we were making. You know, what a concept. Talk about a revolutionary concept. That certainly was, okay? So you've got people on the assembly line being able to actually purchase what they were making. What was a toy for the super wealthy, okay? B-24 bomber, same thing. World War II started. They were going to try to make this heavy bomber, the B-24. They were getting, in the beginning, they had plants located in various cities. They were getting one bomber a month. One bomber a month, okay? Henry Ford got with the government, and they built right down the road from you, you know, at Willow Run, the Willow Run Assembly Plant. Talk about an innovation. It was the largest plant under one continuous roof in the world, all right? And what did it do? Talk about increased productivity. We went from one bomber a plant per month to one B-24 bomber every 55 minutes. It was incredible. No one, Germany, Japan, not any country in the world dreamed we could be so productive. And it's because of the innovation and new technology, okay? So it's not as if the information age is unbelievable. And that's absolutely true. But we have had some tremendous breakthroughs throughout the years, okay? You know, creation of new goods and services, all right? Well, you know, we're going back to having no TV or having a TV, all right? Your iPhone, your smartphone, you know, all this, you know, all the games that my grandchildren play, this piggy game on their Chromebooks, for God's sakes. I mean, all these new, you know, features and products that make life a little simpler. Some folks say, well, yeah, too simple. We've gone a little bit too far with the Chromebooks. Let the kids get outside and get some exercise. That may be true, but anyway, we can't deny that there's a lot of great new goods and services. Number 3, the quality of life. Look, in 1900, life expectancy was just under 50 years of age. I mean, that's incredible to think, you know, you're 49 and you're about to die. I mean, 49 today is young, and when you get to be my age, 49 is really, really young. But now we have a life expectancy of around 77, 78. You know, and you are healthier. It's not you are 77 or 78 and you're crippled. When you folks start to reach older age, if we keep going at this rate, the life expectancy is probably going to be around 98. And it's going to be 98 years of, you know, of relatively good health. Sure, you might not be able to play hockey as well when you're 95 as when you were 35, but still, you're going to enjoy relatively good health. And what does that mean? Well, it means, for you as an individual, it means a tremendous addition to your life, but you're healthier, you live longer, and what it does, it creates what they call a positive externality. You are getting the biggest bang for the buck, but by living longer and living healthier, you're going to be a more productive member of society for a lot longer, okay? So that's just touching the surface, okay? We don't have enough time to go into all of this. Now, again, don't forget, with all this technology, there is a technology, what they call a technology paradox, all right? And that somewhat when we were talking about a savings paradox, savings is a good thing, but if we all save too much, then that's a bad thing because then the economy will tank. Well, in the technology paradox, it has to do with, well, let's face it, we might have that breakthrough. There might be a breakthrough being made, but the structure of society is such that it's not I won't say ready, but it can't accept it or utilize the new technology quickly. There's a time lag, and sometimes it's a fairly substantial time lag. For instance, 1882, Edison lights up the first street in New York, okay? Well, you were thinking, okay, well, we're going to have lots of lights in New York. It took, to fully implement it, it was almost 50 years before that was fully implemented. In terms of folks were still lighting their homes with gas lights. They have those gas lines going through the wall. I can't even imagine how dangerous, those homes, might have been. So the structure of society wasn't there yet to accept it, all right? It took a while. All right, same thing with, well, we had obviously electricity in the late 1800s, but, the plants that were being built in, let's say, 1865, 1870, 1875, 1880, and into the 1890s, how were they built? Well, they were built vertically. And why? Why? Because they were steam powered. The equipment was powered by steam. So they had a huge steam boiler in the basement. And all the steam went up. So you had to go vertically up with it in order to utilize the steam that was being created, okay? Did they have electricity in the 1880s? Yeah. Edison lit up a street in New York City. But there was a huge time lag for industries to switch over. Even though we had the technology, it took quite a while to switch over from steam to electricity. Now, once they did that, the plants didn't have to be vertical anymore. They could be horizontal, okay? Because electricity didn't mind going sideways, all right? Where steam, you had to stay over the boiler. Okay, so we had that, but there's a time lag. Society sometimes isn't ready for it, all right? My uncle, again, who was a scientist in the Naval Department, he invented the steam catapult, launched the planes off the aircraft carriers, invented the escape module to rescue downed submariners. He was telling me back in 1971 they had microchips, all right? But they didn't have all the other factors that were needed to put the microchips to the best use. There was that time lag. The screen that you have on your phone where you slide your finger, or now, I slide my finger and the screen moves. They had that technology back then as well. But society wasn't ready for it. There was, again, another time lag. All right? So, that being said, we just have to know that we have to absolutely have to add, technology to our equation. Certainly to Solow. So we have output is equal to technology times a function of physical capital, human capital, and resources. Okay? See how we're building on this? Okay. So now we're going to go back to institutions. Okay? And you probably figured that because, as I said, of all of these, it's probably, arguably the most important. Okay? So we talk about exogenous growth. That means independent growth outside of the economy. All right? It just sort of happened. It didn't have anything to do with the economy. It's just, we've got this, exogenous growth. And Solow would call it just dumb luck. Well, occasionally there are breakthroughs that are a surprise and perhaps just dumb luck. Like they talk about Post-it notes, okay? Actually, the engineers who were working on that, they were trying to come up with a super epoxy, a super glue, okay? And when they were working on it, they left it for the weekend. They came back and they noticed that it was tacky, but it certainly wasn't a super epoxy, okay? So it was perhaps you could say, well, that was just luck. And maybe so. But, as they say, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. But let's take it another step further. It was the institutions that we have in this country that laid the fertile ground for these engineers to even be working on something like that, okay? So institutions, are responsible for what Solow would say, that's exogenous, that's just dumb luck. No, you've got a situation, you have an economy that has a government that fosters growth like this, all right? So we're going to get, sometimes what you would think of as exogenous growth, outside, but it came from the fertile ground that was supplied by the institutions. Okay? So, we got to add one more. And this is it. So, output is now technology times a function of the interplay of physical capital, human capital, resources, and institutions. Okay? And that's where we're going to stay, at least for now, okay? But let's remember these, okay? Now, what was Solow's other prediction? And we'll talk about that on the last whiteboard. Let me get this one down. All right. This will probably be part of the question on an exam having to do with, this will probably be the second part in terms of the steady state. His idea of convergence theory. Now, convergence theory, when you think about it, you might want to argue, well, that could be happening, but let's take a look. Convergence theory, it says per capita gross domestic product, it will equalize, all right, as nations approach their steady state. Well, we've already established that, nations aren't going to approach and be stuck at their steady state. However, let's take a look at what he's saying here. Have countries that have slower economies have the more industrialized countries reached a steady state? and now the lack of a better term, poorer countries, they're catching up and they're going to converge. Well, it's somewhat of a yes and no answer, okay? Now, if we take the two most populous countries in the world, India and China, they have done a lot in terms of, but remember, they have changed their institutions an awful lot. I mean, we're not talking about Mao's communist Red China anymore. China, albeit they're still not a democracy, they have opened up their economy in a major way to the free market system, okay? India has too. They have changed their institutions. Now, changing your institution at the same time also now investing in capital and investing in research and development, okay, new technology, you take these three, yeah, your economy is going to grow in a major way, okay? So when we say, well, India and China seem to be catching up, in that one respect, yes, they are. We're still growing, but, you got to remember where they were coming from, too. I mean, they were coming from not ground zero, but pretty darn close to it, okay? So, yeah, sure, they are catching up. They got a lot of catching up to do, but still the industrialized countries of the world are still advancing. And now, if we talk about some of the poorer countries of the world, and there are a lot of them, all right, they're not converging. They're the same. In fact, in a lot of textbooks you'll see they're about where they were 50 years ago. All right? So that is not convergence. In fact, in a couple of cases they're going the other way. So it's divergence. All right? So perhaps we could look at India and China as the exception that proves the rule. That we're not really converging. The richer nations are getting wealthier and the poor nations are staying relatively flat, okay? And that gets into international, distribution of wealth and international distribution of income that I teach in another class at somewhere else, but which is a pretty interesting topic. But anyway, for our intents and purposes today, convergence theory means that the more industrialized, advanced countries are, they reach their steady state, and the other countries are coming up, and they're going to converge with the wealthy ones. By and large, that really has not happened. I mean, India and China, they have, embraced, institutions that have allowed their technology and capital to produce great growth. But let's face it, they have a lot of growth to make up for. So yes, they are growing. But the industrialized countries still are growing. And all these other poor countries, they're still relatively stagnant. So they're about the same. All right? So you could call it a mixed bag. But in terms of numbers of countries that are approaching the industrialized countries, no. When you talk about numbers of countries, they certainly aren't. In fact, again, we've got the discrepancies between the real rich and the poor is getting wider and wider. Okay? All right. Well, that takes care of growth theory. Again, real important because it's given us new products, better existing products. Cars have, we made the parts for them. Airbags, anti-skid braking systems. That's our company right down the street. That's where we made the parts. We made the first airbag, the first anti-skid braking systems. We made those parts. So the cars are much better, all right? The products are much better. Any of you young men or young ladies who are, aren't, 250 pounds, you don't have to worry about whether you have power steering or not, You do, and it'll be easy to parallel park. unlike my three sisters who never learned how to parallel park. Okay? All right. So until that'll do it for this week. So I will see everybody next week. Everybody take care.